Hi, my name is Max Stetter. This is going to be a code overview for my senior project called Skipper at Utah Tech University. In this video, we're just going to go over the code that was required to make Skipper and some of the more complex features. So I'm not going to cover stuff like styling or things that are pretty basic. So this was all done in React using Next.js. And the unique thing about Next.js is it has serverless function APIs. So there's no like server file, which means anytime you kind of want to access the server, you have to use these APIs. And I'll explain a little bit later how that affected the way that I made Skipper. So just a reminder, I am interfacing with Spotify's web API, which uses OAuth 2, and that was the first challenge I faced when making Skipper. So just kind of over here is where I'm handling token stuff on the front end. So if you don't have it, then let's get it. So I believe in use auth. So if we look for that, yep, right here, this calls the use auth, which is a hook that was custom made that fetches from the Spotify API using API login, which is something that I made. We'll go over that in a sec, but what that returns is a code, or it gets back the access token, refresh token, and expires in token, which allows you to use Spotify for 1 hour. Once that hour is almost up, we go over to the refresh API, which just refreshes the access token, and it allows users to not have to log in every hour just to keep on using the app. So like I said, we'll go over to /API login or API/login. I talked about it a little bit how it works here, but it goes over to the URL and just uses it, and once it gets a response back, it kind of forwards that to use auth, and then in the login button we have to specify a scope, and once that scope is clicked, that'll give that Spotify account, or it'll give Skipper certain permissions for that Spotify account, which are all specified here. Then using the token, I kind of determine what you should do, because if you're a host, you're always going to have a token. So if you're a guest, you don't have a token here. So if you don't have a token, just return. That's littered throughout this project, and I also use the Spotify API. It's just a package that makes accessing the Spotify user interface easier. I also use Spotify web player. Here is just kind of where I'm manipulating what tracks are going to be playing and what needs to be played. So I send a track URI or a playlist URI here, and that's where I get this. That's how I know what song to play. So over here is where we do that. We kind of get we hit the Spotify API, and then we kind of get back some data about it. So the images. So we always want to get the smallest album image, the name, the URI, and the URI is what the player uses to know what it's going to play. Next, I'll talk about the part I'm probably most proud of about this product, which is the WebSock kind of integration. So it starts here, and I talked about it in my project defense, but one of the most complex parts of this project for me was trying to figure out how I was going to get this WebSocket to work with Next.js, because going into Next.js, I did not realize there's not much support for WebSockets, being that there's no server file. So what you have to do is you have to go to you have to access the API. So if we go to /socket, we kind of check, I use socket.io. So if there is a server, good, then we kind of just connect and we start listening for messages. If there is no socket, we kind of start the socket server, and then we kind of go back here, and we're just, now the server's running and you've connected. So now you are on the WebSocket server, and there's no way for hosts to see what song is playing. There's no way to continuously stream data from Spotify, so I had to make a poll. Let's see if I can find it. Oop. That's called use interval here, which just calls, as the host, you call the Spotify API right here. You check if you have an access token. If you have an access token, then you hit Spotify API, and that just is asking for certain information. It's called several times in several different functions, but what it does is it asks for certain information about the current playing song, gets that song stuff, and then it also keeps track of what song is playing. So if there is no, this is all using state objects through React, and so those are initially set empty. On the first song load, on the first poll, we get the song ID, and that sets the previous and the current song ID to the same thing. And every 5 seconds we're checking if there's a new song ID. So if the current song ID is now different than the previous song ID, that means there's a new song. So then we would set all of our state objects that we're keeping track of, such as the name, the ID, the artists, and the song cover. We set those to be the new values for the new song. And every time one of these things changes, these song name, artist, cover, or ID, we're sending an update. We're broadcasting an update as the host to the room. So one thing I forgot to mention is there's a room system, kind of like Jackbox, where hosts are going to connect to the socket, and they're going to host a room. So they're going to join a room, they're going to publish that room ID, and guests are going to be able to join in on that. You're going to be able to join in on that. Oh, right here it is. They're going to be able to join on that room ID, and from there they get messages. So when a guest joins a room, they send an update request, and when they get an update request, when a host gets an update request, they send out an update. They broadcast an update to the server, and anytime any of the vote threshold is changed or anything's changed on the host's end, then they send a broadcast out with an updated information, and only the host sends out updates, so guests will never be updating each other. Guests can also send votes, and upon getting a vote, the host increases their vote count, and that, of course, is something that's kept track of, and that's going to get sent to the guests and updated information. Here's where I'm handling those messages. It was just, I thought that it was very unique for me to kind of set up the socket this way and kind of introduce this real-time tracking where the host kind of has to pull, but also is sending messages through WebSocket to the guests. And and that's just the kind of quick overview. I know there's a lot of stuff, and you guys can look at my GitHub repo, of course, to get a more detailed look. And then just down here, we're kind of determining stuff based on if you're the host or not. Thank you.